The other day, Caleb and I sat down with David Pogue.
The tech guy. You may have read his New York Times column back in the day or seen him on CBS Sunday Morning.
He's got a new book out called Apple, The First 50 Years. It's a meticulously reported and lavishly illustrated chronicle of, let's face it, the greatest company ever.
Here's a little taste.
I don't know how the next big idea thinks about four-letter words, but
Have at
When
it.
they come
Have
from
at it.
Steve Jobs, we feel good about them.
He called me that night, and his secretary comes on, the assistant says, like, I have Steve on the line. Can you take the call? Sure. He goes, you don't have any idea what the we do here at Apple, do you?
We're going to be posting that episode on Monday, but in the meantime, to get you in the mood, we thought we'd reshare one of our personal favorites, our conversation with the legendary entrepreneur, Tony Fadell. Tony led the teams that created the iPod, the iPhone, and we had him on the show to discuss his book, Build, an unorthodox guide to making things worth making. As a serial entrepreneur myself, I've read a lot of business how-to books. This is the best I've ever come across. It also tells the inside story of the development of the products that have transformed our world. Whether you're an intern or a CEO, I think you're likely to find this pretty interesting.
Today's episode of The Next Big Idea is sponsored by Fabric, Factor, Granola, and Shopify. Fabric by Gerber Life is term life insurance that you can get done today. Apply in minutes at meetfabric.com/NBI. Factor is offering listeners of this show 50% off and free breakfast for a year. Head to factormeals.com/idea50off and use code IDEA50off. Granola is a no-brainer for people in back-to-back meetings. Try it totally free for 3 months. Just head to granola.ai/idea. Start your business today with the industry's best business partner, Shopify. Sign up for your $1 a month trial at shopify.com/NBI.
Tony Fadell, welcome to the Next Big Idea podcast.
Rufus, so great to be here. Thank you for having me on. It's amazing to be here, and I'm looking forward to all your interesting questions.
Well, I just put a copy of your new book, Build, an unorthodox guide to making things worth making, on the desk of my 17-year-old son. I've got 3 boys. He's my oldest. I'd say there's a 50-50 chance that he reads it, Tony, but my pitch to him was chapters are short. It's full of outrageous stories. This guy led the teams that created the iPod and the iPhone. He's diagnosed himself as having ADHD, which seems to run in our family as well, which I think is a great brain type for entrepreneurs. And he describes himself as a mission-driven asshole. What's not to like? And I think I'm going to raise that to 75% probability that he reads it.
Well, interestingly enough, I have a 15-year-old, and he doesn't like to read at all, and he definitely doesn't like anything that Dad does. So he actually picked it up and read it, and he actually came back and said, oh, this is pretty good. I actually learned some things. So to have my 15-year-old say it's pretty good, that was like, oh my God, it's a miracle.
Well, and to have him voluntarily read a book cover to cover that wasn't assigned in school, I think that's pretty good right there.
Exactly.
But the reason I'm so hoping that my son reads the book is that I read it as a kind of manifesto, as a kind of call to action to build cool shit. Like I see an exclamation point after build, right? It's like build, command form. Don't be a consultant. Don't sit on the sidelines. Don't accept the world as it is. Make it different. Make it better. Did you intend the book that way?
Absolutely. The whole goal was to write a book that if I was 20 years old, what would I want to read? What were the things that I've learned over the last 35 years that I would want to learn from? Who would be my mentor when I was 20 again to teach me these things? And so the only reason why, I'm here talking to you now is because I had mentors along the route who helped me to process all the noise of the world. Like, should I be making this hiring decision, or should I be making this funding decision or this product decision, whatever it was. And I had great mentors around me who helped to frame these decisions in very easy to understand terms, getting rid of all that noise of complexity and going, this is simply what we're trying to do here. And then when you see it through those eyes and you see it so simply, you're like, oh yeah, now I know what to do. And so what I find is that most of the time that when I speak to all these entrepreneurs is they usually have the right gut. They usually have the right instinct, but they need somebody around them who's been through it, who's been experienced to validate them. And once they get their idea or their decision validated or possible decision validated, then they're like, run for it. And they build that internal confidence into their gut over time. Now, obviously, there's new experiences, things of that nature that a mentor could help with. But over time, the way you learn is through mentors. And so in this book, it's honoring my mentors. I'm trying to honor the things that I learned from them, as well as what I've learned since then, and putting it together in one book to allow people to get at least a first order view of how to build yourself, your career, a product, a team, a company, and everything in between. And really just trying to give back and honor the mentors who passed on, my mentors who passed on.
And so the kind of application for young folks is pick a field that lights you up, figure out who your heroes are. And then I love this advice you share, which is to be insanely persistent in pursuing them and getting your foot in the door. And now you've become someone who is a hero to many, many people. And there are lots of people who are insanely persistent at trying to get access to you, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you respect that, right? And you have some advice for how to do that well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As you said, you got to pick something that you really want to learn. Whether you're younger or older, always go into whatever you're going to do with what am I going to learn? Not how much money am I going to make? What title am I going to get? First and foremost, what am I going to learn? Because that's going to make you the best. And you definitely need to do that after getting out of college because you really don't know anything about life or the working world, even if you're interned. So you need to go find that out, but go work on things that really are engaging and that you're curious about. Then from there, then be relentless. Be relentless in a smart way. And what I was doing was I was showing what value I could bring. So it was showing the things that I was programming at the time. I was trying to show like I have this startup and I did this hardware and then I did this software and I raised money and I did. So trying to show them I'm just not some kid off the street, but somebody who's really capable and I want to learn. So it was really just laying that out and being persistent in a positive way.
And you say be persistent and be helpful. And I think you see people executing this with you as the recipient, that when you have people who come with good ideas, useful information, interesting articles, comments, questions, that a combination of persistence and being helpful and useful and curious and engaged.
Yeah, it can't be a one-way street. You're absolutely right. It can't be a one-way street. It's like, I'm here, now give me something. No. You have to give them something. You have to give something for them, not just about yourself, but something that might be of value to them, or at least show how you think and what can be different. So to me, it's always reciprocal, right? You need to make sure that you're building a relationship and it's not just hire me, right? And you got to build up a relationship over time. A lot of these companies, especially when they're small, General Magic, I was like employee 29 or 30, they were tiny and they were very secretive. And you had to build a relationship so they get to know you and they know that you're really serious. And this was over I think a 6-month, 7th month kind of from first contact. And I kept working it. And I wasn't every day for 6 months or 7 months, but it was, it was 2 weeks and 4 weeks and, and different things and then submitting more things. And I want to show you this and really winning them over, winning the person I was sending the emails to over to go, no, this person's real. You should really take it, and I know they're young and I know they might not sound very experienced, but you're going to want them because they have the right attitude. Because at the end of the day, even a startup can't only hire the most experienced people in the field. They have to hire a blend of people who are young and green, but eager and want to learn and can provide value, as well as those experienced people, both in management and in individual contributor roles. And you need everybody in between to make these things go. And, especially people when they're younger can do those nights and weekends or those long hours sometimes to make sure it gets, across the line. So all of those things count, and you should just be persistent, but make sure you're building a relationship over time, not just a transaction in a week.
So you worked your ass off at General Magic, and this is the legendary electronics company that helped develop the USB and touchscreen.
Yeah, and it was the iPhone 15 years too early.
Right.
The iPhone 15
Yes.
years too early.
Yes. And I love your line, by the way, you in the opening pages of the book. I tried to build the iPhone twice. Everybody knows about the second time, the time we succeeded. Few people know about the first.
Yeah.
Right. Because we tend to, in our sort of cultural histories, we tend to edit out the failures, right?
For sure. And in Build, I try to go through a lot of failure. Like Build is not just this all glossy, like trying to be an autobiography. It's definitely not trying to do that. It's going over all the failures more so than the successes.
I love that. And actually, and to such an extent that you actually have the end pages of the book in this with the walking lemon
from General Magic.
From General Magic, which was a failed feature, right? And then you have
it was an early emoji, actually.
Okay, right, exactly. It was an early emoji, and then your line is "Do, fail, learn," and this is in the on the end pages of the book, which reminds me of the Beckett line: "Try again, fail better." Right, but this
Yep.
is it. But this is about because probably when people think about people think about the incredible story of Tony Fadell. What they think of is iPod, iPhone, Nest thermostats, just juggernaut of success.
Right.
And
exactly.
it's only it takes a book like this to really surface for people the fact that like there was a huge amount of banging your head against the wall, huge amount of trial and error
for 10 to 15 years to get there, right? And it was learning, right? It was do, fail, learn. It was learn, and then ultimately everything fell in my lap when I was 31. But it was 14, 15 years of failure. Not everybody is 20 something and they build $1 billion company. Like most people, most successful entrepreneurs aren't successful until after they failed a long time and they're in their mid to late 30s is when, the typical average successful entrepreneur is actually created.
Right. And that does strike me as a really important kind of correction of the perception, right? Because people love the stories of Bill Gates and Zuckerberg.
Kid founders,
dropping out of college and like bumping into $1 billion product like a drunk walks into a lamppost, right? It's just this like incredible, precocious success, but it's actually atypical, right? It's a selection bias around the kind of stories we choose to tell.
Absolutely, and lightning strikes too, and you get lucky, right? You have to be the right place, right time, and everything. And I don't want to, take any credit away from them. They did build these businesses when they were young and they were crafty and they got probably the right mentors around them and they learned a lot and they probably made a lot of mistakes. But most people who are successful entrepreneurs are not until they're in their late 30s and early 40s, and regardless of gender or place in the world. So it's just, think about it. Our brain doesn't get fully formed till we're 25. Right.
Yeah,
so if you're 21, 22, like most people don't have the full brain. And I don't even think Zuckerberg or Gates did at the time because it's just human development. And they got a lot of luck and they were able to put the pieces together. And a lot of times they had a family member or somebody around them who really knew some of this stuff and could advise them properly. Right. So, but no, I don't want to take any credit away from them because those were definitely successes.
Yeah. But to some degree, when you figure out how to do everything wrong before you figure out how to do everything right? Because there are some advantages to that because you think of, and not to, obviously, Zuckerberg's gotten a hard time in recent years, for the evolution of Facebook, not to point any fingers, but to some degree,
well, he was at the helm, or he is. He was at the helm.
So, he was at the helm.
We have to point some fingers.
Yes,
but anyways, moving on.
It's fair. I think that's legit. I do. I think it's legit. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems to me that the downside of stumbling into insane success when you're in your early mid-20s and thinking that it was all you're doing, opposed to some degree of luck and good timing, is that you might not develop the humility that otherwise you develop. And I think part of the amazing thing about Steve Jobs' story is that he had early success, but then he encountered a lot of humility, and then he came back. And it seems to me that through this humility and realizing how much has to come together to build these incredible companies, incredible products, how much has to align, how many different talented people and historical timing. Don't you think that humility is important?
Oh, it's incredibly important because I remember when I was at General Magic and I was like, I'm here with the Mac team and we're going to make this. And all the press was saying how we're going to trump Microsoft, and we are the hottest ticket in Silicon Valley, blah, 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 blah. And so you get this and you start going, you start believing it, right? And then the failure hits and it really hurts. And what happened for me, and this also happened to Steve in a way, was that at General Magic was a huge failure in many regards, especially around the product. But then at Philips, where I went and started a mobile computing group afterwards, we failed at sales and marketing. And I didn't know anything really about doing that. And then you fail, like, so each time you have to fail at different new subjects, right? So you can get to really learn them. And if you look at Steve, he went from the success of Apple, from the Mac, was a marginal success. It was an amazing critical success, but a business success it took a while to get to. But then he went and did Next. And he learned the hard way about hardware and platforms because it was no longer a green field, a full green field where anyone could go and take market share. Now he was really competing with IBM and Apple and Microsoft and everyone, and it was a whole different game. And as you said, humility came in, and he was, and the company was acquired by Apple, and it wasn't a big sum of money, right? It was more of a, if you look at it, it was a good sum of money, but it was not what you would think it would need to be given where Apple is today, built on top of so many things that were done at Next. So, you definitely get a lot of humble pie, and you understand that there's a lot of luck, there's a lot of people involved, and that you have to work really hard, and not every single time it's going to happen. And so I think of versions 2.0 Steve, and I compare it to the stories I got from version 1.0 Steve from the General Magic team who worked with it at Apple. And it seems like a very different person. And frankly, to me, I also feel, I'm getting into version 4.0 of myself. But between that first decade in Silicon Valley in the 90s with General Magic and Philips, and then the next one with Apple, and then the next one after that with Nest, each of those were different versions of myself that I've learned and upgraded, so to speak, over time.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's often underappreciated about Jobs is people see him as this sort of like singular, sort of fiery, cantankerous personality. And I don't know that the degree to which he evolved and changed is fully appreciated.
He was much more mission driven than ego driven.
You may need a little background on Tony's taxonomy of assholes. He says that throughout your career, you're bound to encounter some real jerks. They're usually men, and they come in 4 flavors. First, there are political assholes. These are the people who, quote, master the art of corporate politics and then do nothing but take credit for everyone else's work. Next, there are controlling assholes. They micromanage, they strangle creativity and joy. The only ideas they like are their own, and they never give anyone credit for their work. Third, we have assholes. Pretty self-explanatory. They're just sucky, insecure jerks who everyone hates. And then finally, there are mission-driven assholes, like Steve Jobs. They're passionate, they speak their mind, they may not always be easygoing, but at least they care. They're willing to give credit where it's due and praise when it's earned. If you've ever worked for a mission-driven asshole, chances are you grudgingly respected them because despite their flaws, they push you to do the best work of your life. Tony, he's a mission-driven asshole.
And this happened to me as well, is at the beginning of my career. I'm like, you're ego-driven. I gotta prove myself, right? And so you're going to really work hard to prove yourself. But then over time, you figure out it's about the team. It's about the mission. It's about all these other things.
Yes.
And when you go through enough of these failures, you understand everybody's got to work together. Yeah. You start changing your point of view on the world, on your team, and understanding that we're not making, and this happened at General Magic, this happened with the Apple II. Mm-hmm. We weren't making geek products for other geeks. We had to start making real products for real consumers and be very empathetic with what their problems were, not necessarily take their ideas, but really try to understand their insights and deliver them something that was a painkiller and a superpower at the same time. And it takes you going through those phases. And that's how he got to the Mac, right? He's like, oh my God, all these people are having problems. And it was geeks for geeks' sake on Apple II. But Mac was built for the rest of us, as was in the advertising line. I think a lot of engineers and people in the tech world have to go through, stop trying to impress your teammate, the other geek on the team. Remember, you're in service of the end customer, and you need to make it such complicated technology so simple that it turns into a superpower, and the customers rave about you and they're great word of mouth marketing because you've really empathized and taken away a pain and given them something that they feel like they've never had before, and they can do 10x whatever it is better than they could before.
This to me was one of the biggest takeaways for me as somebody now building company number 4 is what you've learned about the importance of all these different pieces of the building process, from the coding to the marketing to the design, needing to be
HR, organization.
HR, exactly, team building. Everyone has to some degree, grok all of those different functions and understand the mission. And everyone has to be a designer. Everyone has to be a marketer to some degree, right? Everybody has to understand the story, that all this stuff, you can't keep all your peas and mashed potatoes entirely separate here. You've got to bring it all together.
Yeah, I hear a lot of times about engineering-led organizations or marketing-led organizations or sales-led organizations. At the end of the day, it's the customer who wins and the customer-led organization. And you need to have functions like product marketing and all of it, and everybody's in service of the customer. It's not just, we have a rocket science engineer over here, and we're going to just listen to them. A lot of companies fall into that trap, and a lot of people like in the sales organization, well, we're engineering-led, they're never going to listen to us. That's not the right attitude to take. What you need to do is you need to make sure you have product marketing there. That's the voice of the customer. And there's many customers, and making sure that you have some really good place that is a neutral ground where you're discussing all these topics and understanding it's for the customer, not sales versus engineering or legal versus marketing or something like that.
And you say that though there are many customers, you've got to focus on one, right? You have to choose your customer.
Absolutely. You can only have one customer. You hear all of these, oh, well, we're going to be B2C. We're going to be B2B. We're going to do all of these things. And when I see plans like that come across my inbox, I'm like, I always ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because you can't be both. Because it is truly a schizophrenic company to serve a B2B market with a B2C team or vice versa. And it's very different ways you design and develop and even market the products, sell the products. And you have to really pick only one customer who you're focusing on. You really have to know what organization you're building from the outset, because they're two very different things depending on the type of customer, that ultimate customer you're serving.
Coming up after the break, Tony gets a phone call that changes his life and the world. Here's my personal approach to insurance. I don't need it for small stuff like electronics or flights. Over time, the math doesn't work, but it does make sense for the big stuff: health, home, and life insurance. Life insurance isn't something you buy for yourself. You buy it for the people you love and who rely on you, so they're not scrambling. They're covered. They have less to worry about in an already difficult, unexpected time. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it easy to give them that. Fabric by Gerber Life is term life insurance you can get done today. Made for busy parents like you, all online, on your schedule, right from your couch. You could be covered in 10 minutes, often with no health exam required. If you've got kids, especially if you're young and healthy, the time to lock in low rates is now. There's no risk, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can cancel at any time. Fabric also has free digital wills, tools to invest in your kids' future, and more, all right from your phone. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/NBI. Meetfabric.com/NBI. And use my link so they know I sent you. meetfabric.com/NBI. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions.
Tell me if this has ever happened to you, because I can tell you it's happened to me. You leave a meeting and you think, wow, that was productive. We accomplished so much. We set all these goals. And then 10 minutes later, half hour, you stop and you realize, wait, what am I supposed to be doing? You look back at your notes and it's just kind of a jumble of random keywords that don't make any sense. It's a mess. But Granola fixes that. Granola is an AI-powered notepad built for the way real people actually meet. You take rough notes just like you normally would, but in the background, Granola securely transcribes the meeting, and it turns everything into clean, structured, actually useful notes when the meeting ends. And the best part is that it works through your device's audio, which means it integrates seamlessly into the video conferencing tools you already use. So there's no setup and none of those awkward bots that you end up just kicking out of the meeting. We've been using Granola for months now. And not only does it let all of us just be a little more present in meetings because we're not distractedly trying to take our own notes, but it also creates this incredible living archive of everything we've ever discussed as a team or with external partners. And by the way, it's a beautiful interface. If meetings are eating up your day, Granola is a no-brainer. You can try it totally free for 3 months. Just head to granola.ai/idea. That's granola.ai/idea to get your time back. Get 3 months free at granola.ai/idea.
So going back to your story, so you spent 4 years at General Magic. You then go to Philips as a young CTO, and at both places, you're really trying to build a precursor to the iPhone, effectively, right? At Philips, you actually released the Velo and the Nino. You then start your own company, Fuse Systems, to build an MP3 player. I think you're in Colorado on a chairlift, right?
Yes,
right?
I am.
And it's just like
Vail, in fact.
Okay, there we are. We were at Vail. Post.com crash 2000. Get a call from Jonathan Rubinstein, Apple's chief hardware engineer. They're looking for someone to help them build a, quote, small electronic device. And without missing a beat, you say you're a wizard at doing that. You think you're being invited to help them build a handheld personal assistant.
Newton 2.0.
But pretty soon you realize that's not the assignment.
Yeah, I understand. And like after the first 15 minutes after signing the NDA as a consultant, what they wanted, which was iTunes. How do you take iTunes on the go? Because iTunes was about 6 months old at that point. They had just purchased Jeff Robbins' company, SoundJam, and turned it into iTunes. And they wanted to get it on the go.
So your company, Fuse Systems, is struggling a bit to raise the funding it needs.
It was April 2000, right?
Yeah,
So
totally.
Give me a break. It was a horror. If you think now is bad, you should have seen it then.
I know. I was trying to raise money in 2000. I remember it very well. But effectively, Apple hires not just you, but your entire team to build what turned out to be the iPod. Can you tell us about that journey? Because that is just astounding. That I believe within 10 months, right,
Yep.
you guys actually released the first iPod.
So the story there is, at Fuse, making MP3, we're designing and building MP3 players, are really digital audio and video jukeboxes for like home theaters and stuff. So I had been working on that for 2 years at Fuse, and then before that at Philips, both on the Nino and the Velo, as well as some other things I was doing there. So I was well versed in it. I understood it. And was working on it. And so when Apple called, I was like, oh, okay, I just need to brush up on a couple of things and then throw together the design in literally 6 weeks, because I was already up to speed on many things, not everything, but many things. And 6 weeks from, that was the beginning of late January, early February, until the 3rd or 4th week of March was the first pitch to Steve of what would become the iPod. Mm-hmm. And he green lighted it there, to move forward to the next phase, not necessarily shipping it, but what's the next phase? And I signed on as an employee in the middle of April. Second day I was at Apple as a full-time employee, I was on a plane to Taiwan to find a manufacturer for the iPod. So it was all these things were lining up, and because I had built devices before, and we used some of my contacts, and we were able to land the right partner for manufacturing and some design. I could bring some people from my Fuse team, and then had to hire lots of people either from General Magic or Philips or otherwise, because I couldn't really hire anybody from inside Apple because they were all focused on the Mac at the time. So had to build the team from scratch. And then we also took a big license and ultimately bought the software that was Pixo, which was the not operating system, but the user interface for the iPod. So all of that stuff came together, and we had this, team of 30 people, maybe 35, depending on how you count it. And we worked night and day and night with the Pixo guys, as well as the Portal Player guys who were making the chipset, and threw it together and launched it. So literally from go, which was the end of March till the end of October was the development time. And we even had 9/11 in the middle of it. So that was also a harrowing situation.
That's insane. It's so incredible. I remember the first time I saw the first iPod. It was coincidentally on a chairlift. And a buddy of mine pulled this thing out, and he was like, "Spin the wheel," and.
Was it the mechanical wheel? Was it the first
yeah.
gen?
Oh yeah, I still have it. I still have it.
Oh,
I'm getting goosebumps right now, Tony. I have much to my wife's dismay. I have a bookshelf with all my favorite historical electronic devices. I've got the 1970s Mattel electronic football game. Remember that?
Mattel 1 or Mattel Football 1 or Football 2?
I think it was one.
The green one or the beige one?
Oh, beige. It was beige.
Oh, okay. So you have the very first one. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. So all my buddies had. We were obsessed with that. Roughly the size of an iPod, right?
Yeah.
And then the Newton, the Palm Pilot, the Trio, the first iPod, first iPhone. So I have them all on a shelf. My wife is like, "What are you doing with it?" But the rotating. I mean, a lot of listeners probably wouldn't remember this, but the first iPod had a physically rotating disc, and the only problem, of course, is that if you took it to the beach, you could get a grain of sand under it.
Yeah.
But I was kind of heartbroken when it went on to a touch.
Yeah, click wheel.
Click wheel. Yeah. But it was such a simple device, right? I mean, there are limited times in history when you can have just so much simplicity, 1,000 songs in your pocket, and it just took off. And meanwhile, you'd spent 10 years trying to build similar products, trying to get them to take off. Do you think how much of this was team? How much of it was historical timing? How much of it was simplicity? Like, how do you explain what came together there?
One thing was, over the years, especially from General Magic time, I learned that we can't just invent technology we'd like to have and it just shows up. Sometimes you have to wait for the technology, right? So your timing is about technology intersection. So sometimes there's lots of great ideas, like the iPhone we were doing at General Magic, but we didn't have the internet. We didn't have Wi-Fi. We didn't have cell phones, really. Most people didn't even have cell phones, let alone mobile data, right? Nobody knew about messaging or email really at the time, or downloadable games and these things. So the other thing is, one is understanding the technology that's right, but also, are people in the right frame of mind socially, like the zeitgeist? Are they willing to, and do they understand the pain you're trying to solve? And in the case of General Magic, we didn't have the technology and no one understood the pain we were trying to solve. It was geeks solving for geeks. So when the iPod showed up, I was like, wait a second. I know about MP3. Okay, we know that. iTunes was already happening. Okay,
yeah.
MP3, yes, I know that. That's going to work. Oh, there are chipsets. Hopefully there's going to be portable chipsets. So I have to go look for portable chipsets, or somebody working on it. I found one company, like I said, Portal Player, that had exactly the perfect thing. They weren't even making portable MP3 players for it. I had to get them to move it and change it. They were making kind of a rack mount MP3 players. So we had to change that. And then at the same time, I was like, and people need 1,000 songs in their pocket, right? They really want that. I know it because I wanted it because I was a DJ and I was lugging thousands of CDs between gigs.
In those books, we had those big, like, encyclopedic books with CDs in them. Remember that?
And they're very heavy, right? So all of that stuff came together, and I was like, oh my God, this can actually occur. And my biggest thing, like from a technical perspective, I knew how to build it, all that stuff. The issue that I had, and the one thing I went to Steve, and this is what I learned at Philips, is, Steve, I know we can build this, but are you going to be able to sell and market it? Because I had been at Philips and there was a disaster. They could just sell TVs and DVD players, and because no one was getting a bonus for selling a Velo or a Nino. And so I was like, Steve, and nobody would give us the marketing dollars to really market it right. And I said, Steve, I can build this thing. We can build this, not a problem. But what are you going to do to sell and market it? And he literally said, and this was just before I accepted the job, he said, I will dedicate minimally 2 quarters, full quarters, with no marketing dollars or anything for the Mac or any of the other products. We will only focus on iPod. And if it goes well, I'll keep it focused that way for at least 4 quarters or longer. And that's what happened. So I knew that I thought society was right, the technology was right, and Toshiba had just shown at a Japanese tech fair the hard drive. So we even had the storage. I had the chipset, knew all the other pieces. I was like, we can do this. And he said, I'll do the sales and marketing right. And I was like, okay, now it's time. And that's really what all those pieces had to come together. And I wouldn't have known those pieces unless I had all those failures that decade before and even previous to that.
Building a game-changing product isn't only about technical innovation. It's about storytelling. Think about General Magic's Magic Link. Why did it fail? Because it didn't solve a real customer problem. It didn't have a great why. Tony says you need to explain why this thing exists, why it matters, why people need it, before you focus on the what, the features, the design, that sort of thing. This is storytelling, and Steve Jobs was a master at it. For months and months during product development, Steve would workshop the product story with friends, family, colleagues, getting feedback, refining, revising. Before he told you what a product did, Tony says, Steve always took the time to explain why you needed it.
Music's a part of everyone's life. Everyone. Music's been around forever. It will always be around. This is not a speculative market. And because it's a part of everyone's life, it's a very large target market all around the world. It knows no boundaries. But interestingly enough, in this whole new digital music revolution, there is no market leader.
That's Jobs back in 2001. He's dressed in his trademark black turtleneck and blue jeans, pacing back and forth in front of a slideshow. But this is a more humble version of the iconic Steve Jobs product announcement. Instead of some grand auditorium, it looks like he's at a college lecture hall. And the audience isn't squealing with delight. They're pretty subdued, which makes sense. Apple, back in 2001, was nothing like the company it is today. It was struggling, but that was about to change.
And we are introducing a product today that takes us exactly there. And that product is called iPod. The biggest thing about iPod is it holds 1,000 songs. To have your whole music library with you at all times is a quantum leap in listening to music. But the coolest thing about iPod is that your entire music library fits in your pocket.
Yeah, I bought the first iPod within weeks of seeing it on the chairlift. And then I ended up a few years later standing in line for several hours to buy the first iPhone. And fast forward, today, Apple's the most valuable company in the world. The iPod was critical to reinventing the company, gave birth to the iPhone. You know, we all have kind of wild dreams when we build companies and build products about what they might turn into. This has got to be a case where even you could not possibly have imagined how extraordinary the impact would be of these products. I mean, how do you think about that?
Well, I was very much tempered after the disaster that was General Magic, right? We were going to take over the world. And then again at Philips. So over time, you get, instead of saying we're going to take over the world, you get hopeful. You're like, I hope this is going to be a success, but I've gone through this enough. I'm going to do the best job we possibly can. I hope it's success, but I don't bet on it, right? Because you can really, if you set expectations wrong, you're like, we got to do a great job and maybe people will do it, and keep understanding we have to iterate on it till we get it right. 3 generations to really get it right, whether it's the iPhone or the iPod or anything for that matter. And so I'm always hopeful that it's a success, but I definitely no longer like, oh my God, it definitely will be. I don't ever take that because I don't want anyone to get lazy or to think, not look at every single detail because they just believe it's going to be. We can't believe anything until we see the sales and we see real numbers and get customer comments back. And so now looking back, right, I can say, oh yes, it was a success. It's amazing. And it's amazing to have that. But the next time you do it, the bar is even that much higher to cross, the hurdle's even that much higher to jump over because you've just done it, right? And so to do it with the iPod and then say, we're going to do it again with iPhone, and it was even a bigger market and more competition and everything, that was tough, right? And then we did it again with Nest. So, just being humble, sticking to your guns and understanding that it is not the first product that's going to be successful, but it's going to take iteration and everything else. If you stay humble like that, like we just talked about humility, then you might have a chance of success.
Well, and actually, it's interesting because you don't see a lot of examples of this kind of succession of successes. And you can always say right time, right place. But I think the success of Nest really has kind of shown that you've figured out something that's replicable.
Yeah, we didn't have any other competition. You think about like,
True.
you could say Google and or Facebook. There were other mobile services out there at the same time as Facebook. And there were different other search engines, right? And sure, Google had some little bit of technology, but there was a lot of people. When we came out with Nest, there was nobody doing anything. The same products had been on the market for 10, 15 years. Yeah. So I think of it as a full green field again.
And so when you told people, okay, I'm going to leave Apple and I'm going to reinvent the thermostat, do you get some chuckles?
A lot of laughter, even from my wife going, the iPod guy can't do this. The iPhone guy can't do this. This doesn't make any sense. You got to do something cool. And I'm like, no, this is really cool. Let me tell you why it's cool. Because you're spending $1,000 to $1,500 a year on your energy that this thing controls. If you could save that kind of money or save a good portion of that, you're going to be very happy and you're actually comfortable. And so I had convinced myself, and I talked to a couple of other really smart people that it could be done. They joined the team, obviously, like Matt Rogers did, and we were off. But trust me, those first investor meetings, all the other, like, well, yeah, we'll invest in you, but we don't believe in this idea. So there was a lot of naysayers. Just like there were a lot of naysayers when I was doing Fuse before iPod. They're like, we're not doing that. No. And this is the difference between data-driven decision and opinion-driven decision. When you're doing something new, if you don't believe in what you're doing and you have enough data to, convince yourself, you're just not irrational about your opinion-based decision. That's what it takes. You have to convince investors, employees, partners, all kinds of people that you know what you're doing. And you have to really believe if you want to have any kind of success. And it's mostly out of opinion that you're going to be, if you're doing anything innovative, because the world's never seen it before.
Was it part of the original pitch that this could be the heart of the connected home?
Yeah.
That the Internet of Things was coming and that this was going to be the kind of pole position in the new wired home? Did you see that at the time or that came later?
That's a great question. And so what happened was I always felt it. I always knew it because I had, when I was doing the original business plan for Nest, I was on what are the roadmap of products, not just the roadmap of thermostat, but what are the roadmap of products? Because I saw all kinds of other things that were broken in the home. So I was like, this is what it's going to be about. We're going to bring love to all these unloved products that are so essential in the home. But I didn't pitch it that way. Because you can scare people. Because if a platform cannot exist by itself and believe people are going to just jump on your platform. You have to solve an application. You have to bring a solution, and it has to be really world class. And if it gets adopted, then you might have the right to create a platform out of it. But to go up to a VC and go, I'm going to build this great platform, and that's what it is, and this is the first product that's going to go on the platform, no one will invest in that because that's a pipe dream. So we always had that thing, but you got to be careful. You can scare people if your vision is too big. You can reveal it to them later after you have a certain amount of success. Or you have really smart VCs, or like me, I had one person on the board as well as a mentor who I could tell them where we were going, and then they would shake their head and say, yeah, that's the right way to think about it.
Right. Interesting. It was almost too ambitious, right? The people would say,
you can't be too ambitious, right?
It's so interesting. I've always thought that when you're pitching investors, that it's really this, I found you want to oscillate between world-conquering, wide-eyed, passionate mission, which you're feeling, of course, and then here are all the things that could go wrong, and sobriety, that you kind of want to communicate both. But, you talk about kind of the combination of the emotional connection with the product and the logical connection, the painkiller, the need that's being solved. And it just occurred to me that we were talking earlier about the physical rotating disc on the first iPod. It's probably not, I'm sure many people have noted this, that actually the Nest replicated that or echoed that, right? Or it rhymed with that, right? In the sense that the Nest thermostat had this beautiful, continues to have, right? This beautiful physical thing you can spin, you can turn. It also echoed the beautiful simplicity of that first iPod.
We had a huge fight inside of Nest going, everything's touchscreen now. This needs to be a touchscreen device. And I was like, no. We're going to use manual control, a physical control, because all you have to do most of the time, 99.9% of the time, you're just turning it up and down. What's the most satisfying thing to do is just turn a knob. I'm like, that's what we're going to do. So we had a big pushback, and people are like, no, it's multi-touch. That's what the trend is in the world, just like we're seeing with cars. And I'm like, no, pick the right interface for what the task is at hand, not just because of what's trendy. And we see just too many companies following trends instead of doing the right design. And so it was a coincidence that it was round for the thermostat and, that mimicked in some ways the iPod. But really, it was because it was the right thing for the design at the time. Just like the multi-touch screen was the right thing to do for the iPhone and not the click wheel, because we were trying to make the click wheel to do dialing. And that was like going back to the old rotary dial phones. That was dumb too. We were like, at some point, this makes no sense, right? We're going backwards, not forwards. So we really had to, again, you have to pick what's best for the problem you're trying to solve, and not just what's in vogue or in fashion.
One of my favorite stories in the book is the story about the decision to include the Phillips head screwdriver with the Nest thermostat, right? And like the obsession with kind of delight with the product and solving the problem for the customer in that story is just totally infectious for me. Can you share that story?
What I realized as going through all these failures in my career and what have you, and watching Steve do this, is really the customer is looking at all the touch points and making their mind up about the product through the marketing and how they interact with the website and how they learn about the product and how they try the product and all these different things. Each of those customer touch points is a part of a customer journey. And you have to nail all of those things correctly to get people to build trust in your brand, to trust your brand. And so with the thermostat, with the Nest Learning thermostat, the biggest issue that we were very scared about was installation. People don't install their thermostats. The only people who do that are like professionals, and then they sell you whatever they want. And I knew for a fact, and we all knew, that the number one friction point is going to be those installers. Because if the installers are asked, should I put this product in or that product in, or what do you recommend? The installers will recommend whatever they're spiffed on or whatever they get sales incentives for, which was typically Honeywell at the time, which was, for every 10 thermostats or every 20 thermostats, you got a free trip to Hawaii. We couldn't compete with that. So, and these guys would just say, I've been installing these things for 20 years. These are the things that work. You need to install this. So we were well behind the 8 ball there. So we had to make sure that the out-of-box experience and the buying experience was so credible and so trust-building that people, we hoped, would most likely install it themselves. And so my goal was to try to get to between 40 and 60% of thermostats being self-installed as opposed to with a professional. So we spent a long time working through all the details of installation, all these other things, including special connectors, all kinds of cool software ways to make it easy. And one of the other things that we needed to do was, if they're going to self-install it, many people might not have the right tools. So I said, we need to put a tool in the box. Everyone's like, everyone's got a Phillips screwdriver. I said, but not a Nest one. We want to make sure it's a complete package. When people take it out of the box, they have almost everything they need. What we didn't put, it was wire cutters in there. That was the only thing we didn't put in the box. We put the screws, we put everything else they needed. And through that screwdriver, it was people were like, oh my God, this screwdriver, they thought of everything. They put this in and this in, and people were making videos about just the screwdriver online. It was the best word of mouth ever, saying, I did this, I installed this myself because we put that in. And when I was thinking it was between 40 and 60% in self-installing, we did such a good job that we were over 90% self-installed.
Wow.
And the professional installers who installed it were like, this is a dream. I could go in there, charge $200 to install it, and it takes me all of 5 to 10 minutes, and I make a ton of money, right? So then that was another way of where we were earning trust or of friends in the installation channel. So that was all well and good. But then ultimately, when we came to the next generation and the next generation of the Nest thermostat, people were like, rip the screwdriver out of the box. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is the best marketing tool we have. It helps to cement people. And remember, people are not buying new thermostats every year. These are new customers who are buying a Generation 2 or Generation 3 thermostat. They should have the same experience as the early adopters. No way over my dead body are you taking the screwdriver out of the box. And guess what? Even to this day, and I'm not even at Google anymore, they still include it with the high-end thermostat is the screwdriver in the box. So it just goes to show sometimes, what seems to make logical sense doesn't make the smart emotional sense for the customer.
And every customer ends up with a little beautiful Nest thermostat in their drawer, reminding them of their great experience, right? It's like this marketing
exactly.
tool.
They use
and
it and then they show people. It's wonderful.
And it costs what, 90 cents, a couple bucks, which was a lot, which from a margin perspective was actually very meaningful, right?
Yeah, exactly. That was a half point to a point of margin.
When we come back, Tony's 3-point checklist for spotting a great idea. Folks, there's nothing like the first warm weekends of spring to get me outside exercising. And then I'm reminded we not only need to move our bodies, we also need to fuel them with good food. The challenge so many of us have is that preparing food, real food, takes time. I have discovered, however, a solution: Factor. Fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs, ready in 2 minutes, no planning, no cooking. Factor delivers quality, functional ingredients, including lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole foods, and healthy fats. No refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, no refined seed oils. There is incredible variety to choose from. 100 rotating weekly meals to keep things fresh and delicious. My personal favorites include the ginger teriyaki salmon and the shredded chicken taco bowl. Options include high-protein, calorie-smart Mediterranean diet and ready-to-eat salads. Factor is always fresh, never frozen, ready in about 2 minutes, no prep, no stress, so you can actually stick to your nutrition goals as well as everything else you're trying to get done. I've had a great experience with Factor. Give it a try. Head to factormeals.com/idea50off and use code IDEA50OFF to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. My wife thinks I have an online shopping habit. She would say addiction. I think that's a strong word. It's true I've been taken lately with beautiful spoons and spatulas made of wood, running shoes, colorful backpacks. We all have our weaknesses. The frustration, of course, comes when you find the perfect item and then you see the dreaded credit card entry page. Such a chore. Then you sometimes see the purple pay button that has all your information saved, making checkout as simple as a tap on your screen. Shopify makes checkout easy. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., from household names like Allbirds, Cotopaxi, and Gymshark to brands just getting started. Shopify is your e-commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. See less carts go abandoned and more sales go with Shopify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/NBI. Go to shopify.com/NBI. That's shopify.com/NBI. Well, you've succeeded, I think, when the changes that your products make to the world are so dramatic that people complain about them, right? So you think about technologies that have transformed the way people live and interact and behave. I think about, the automobile, the telephone, maybe TV and radio, and the iPhone, clearly, right? It would be up there. You said in 2017 at a talk at London's Design Museum, I wake up in cold sweats every so often thinking, what did we bring into the world? How do you think about the the pros and cons of the way the world's changed because of the iPhone?
Well, technology is neutral. It can be used for good purposes. It can be used for bad purposes. In the case of the iPhone, it goes even further than that. When we are creators of something that's so impactful to the world, whether we are a part of the company anymore or outside of that company, if you are part of the creator, I feel a personal responsibility, and I make sure that I'm open and I talk about the unintended consequences of the product that we invented. And in this case specifically, I went on a rant about digital device addiction. And so I went after it, and a lot of people at Apple didn't like me for doing that. And especially I wasn't at Apple, and they were like, "Shut up, Tony, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "No, it's an important thing. And you guys aren't listening. You're not listening to the customers. You need to do the right thing." So I went on all the TV networks. I went on podcasts all over saying it. And then 6 months later, I'm not saying I'm the only one who was saying it, but a lot of other people are saying about it. And screen time showed up on the iPhone, and then ultimately iPad and other things. So, I think it is incumbent on those people who do change the world to watch over the things that they do, and make sure that if there are unintended consequences, they speak up and they make the change if they can. In this case, I couldn't make the change, but I could try to help force a change. And you need to be responsible for that. You can't just say, "Oh, so what? Moving on, let the world deal with it." I don't think that's the right way to be if you're truly a responsible inventor. And in the case of the iPhone, I really think of it, or an iPad or something like it, I think of it as a refrigerator. And because it's a platform, Apple owns that, more or less controls that refrigerator. Now you can put anything you want in that refrigerator. You can put bad food, or you can put good food. You can overconsume the food, right? But as a platform provider, you need to provide the tools for digital consumption tracking and control, so that people in this refrigerator, so to speak, they can figure out and have the information, just like the nutritional guide on the side of on a food product. You know what's inside of it. So if you want to buy it, put it in your refrigerator, how much you should use it, as well as having the tools to understand if you've been consuming it too much, or other ways of understanding that privacy might be infringed upon, those kinds of things. So I think it's incumbent on companies building platforms and products that are so impactful that they do their part to make sure that they minimize the unintended consequences as much as possible.
So companies need to take responsibility, do the right thing. But you're also saying that individuals, if the iPhone is a refrigerator, pay attention to what you put in it, and maybe how many hours a day you're consuming food out of it, right? Out of your digital refrigerator. You can listen to podcasts, right? And learn a lot. There's a lot of different things you can do.
Sure. But you can over listen to podcasts, just like you can binge watch too many TV shows, right?
I'm not sure. That might be the one thing I think you can't overdo is the podcast. But the
of course.
But I think you said you have a family screen time policy. Are you still doing screen-free Sundays?
The biggest issue was COVID, right? So we were just up until that, and now also the kids are older. So yeah, we're trying to do that, but it's not necessarily the same. But when you're younger, for sure, we were doing that. And so kids are older now. 15. They have different ideas, and they go off with their friends and do what they have to do. So I think, we have to make sure we have the right rules depending on the age group.
We talked in the beginning about this idea that we can build things, we can change the world, which is not something I think everybody feels today, right? The world has gotten so much more complicated. But I love this. I think this might resonate you. I've always loved this quote from Steve Jobs. Life can be much broader when you discover one simple fact. Everything around you is made up by people who are no smarter than you. The minute you understand that you can poke life, and if you push in, something will pop out the other side. You can change it, you can mold it. Maybe that's the most important thing. So it strikes me that, we have a lot of problems in the world, right? We have problems with technology. We have problems with global warming. but we have agency. We can build things. We can fix things. That's one of the messages I get from your book.
Absolutely. That's the biggest thing. And that's the reason for Build. It is all about the fact that everything we see on this planet, that's atoms based for the most part, was created by a human. Very few things were created by nature. I'm talking about non-biological things. And so we built this planet the way it is. We can fix the planet. We can improve it. And this climate crisis is what we need to do because our forefathers and mothers built it that way. Now we need to fix it. But we can't just sit there and be, upset and worried and just say, oh, it'll never get better. It's for us to fix. And that's the beautiful thing about it is we can fix it. We just need to have the right will to do so. And it's so empowering. And it's a drug for me, right? I love building. And I love writing the book all about building, helping other people, because I think it's the most impactful thing I can do to this planet than just raising kids, right? I can't even have a child. I'm not a woman. I can't bear a child, but this is the closest thing I can do and manifest amazing things in the world if we put enough love into them and understand the story behind it and make sure you communicate to enough people. And so it's infectious, and I wouldn't want to change it for the world, even with the 10 years or more of failure, with all the hardships. It's so rewarding for me.
Tony isn't in the driver's seat anymore. These days, he spends his time leading an investment and advisory firm called Future Shape. He coaches and funds startups that are working to build a greener, healthier, safer future. Take this company, Menlo Micro, for example. They've designed a smaller, faster, and more energy-efficient RF switch. To explain how they've done this, you need to know a lot more about electrical engineering than I do, but I can tell you that the implications are profound. In India, for example, 8% of all electricity is used by ceiling fans. Install one of Menlo's switches, and you could cut a fan's energy consumption in half. Install them everywhere in India, and you could take ceiling fans from 8% of the country's energy usage to 4%. These are the kinds of innovations that light Tony up. The kinds of innovations that have the three elements Tony says every great idea requires. They have to solve for a why, they need to fix a problem that real people have in their daily lives, and they have to follow you around. You can't stop thinking about it.
And so we are on the ground helping them in many ways. We're not just, here's a check, bye-bye. So a lot of times we're helping with the sales and the marketing and the org charts and how to think about engineering or how to think about implementing AI inside of your company. Because we have over 200 different companies that we're directly invested in. We see all kinds of great, smart technologies, smart people that can collaborate. And we'll take something from health, like the health tech area, and add it to the ag tech area or vice versa, and get these teams that you would never think would be talking together, actually talking and making each other better. So to me, that is what's so wonderful to see is now that, over 200 of these companies, I get to play in each of their sandboxes every day and get to be hands-on in a lot of them, depending on where they are in their gestation. So to me, it's not, it is different, but I still get the intellectual curiosity. I get learn about so many more areas from all these very, very smart people. So it's just a different point in life. And I really enjoy being a mentor, just like my mentors were for me and like writing the book. It's such a dream to see all of these people realizing their big visions and being along for that ride and watching them grow, watching these companies grow, watching the customers come in. It's so rewarding to me. I wouldn't trade it.
Okay, folks, Build, an unorthodox guide to making things worth making. Fascinating and useful. I'm giving a couple dozen copies to members of our team, to friends who want to build cool shit. Thank you, Tony Fadell, for being with us today.
Rufus, thank you so much. Thanks for the insightful questions. I really enjoyed it. And I hope you and your listeners like Build and it helps you in some way.
And that's our show. If you enjoyed today's episode, you might want to check out our conversations with Ray Dalio, Shelley Archambault, Dan Coyle, Safi Bacall, and Anissa Ramirez. To hear those episodes, to hear any of our episodes, follow The Next Big Idea on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now. While you're at it, we'd be flattered, touched, delighted, elated if you'd leave us a rating and a review. We'd love to hear what you think. Today's episode was written and produced by Caleb Bissinger. Our executive producer is Michael Kovnat. Sound design by Mike Toda. We love building this show with the team at LinkedIn. I'm Rufus Griscom. See you next week.